Good afternoon. So today is Easter, and it's very quiet. I haven't heard a helicopter, I haven't heard a plane. All the shops are shut. I saw one person walking around. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. Because you don't realize how much you appreciate this level of silence. I haven't seen one dog walker. I haven't even really seen that many cars. So I feel like one of the lucky ones, really. I feel like because I don't traditionally get involved with this holiday, I feel I'm able to enjoy what society sort of left behind. And let me just get a drink. I've been thinking a lot about the early 2000s, not so much the back end of the 2000s, like 2008, 9, 10, but 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and even 7. So the middle part as well. And I think life was better in the early 2000s. When I think back, it feels like the world was a lot more. It had a lot more order. It was perhaps cleaner. All the issues what we face today existed back then. They just weren't really. We could manage them. So I'll talk a little bit about. I think when anybody talks about the early 2000s, I think what they really want to say is if you think the 70s, 80s, and 90s were edgy, or edgier than the early 2000s, and then we look at today's current market, what I'm trying to say is 70s, 80s, 90s made the 2000s look unedgy, but then the 2000s are now extremely edgy compared to today's point of view. So obviously in the early 2000s you had shows like the Opie and Anthony Show. In the UK you had shows like Little Britain. It was all about who could be a shock jock and who could it was very catchphrasey era, so most catchphrases in the UK come from Little Britain, to the point where I'll sometimes say something and wonder where I got that phrase from. It was actually an episode of Little Britain, or a character from Little Britain. Now, at the time, I don't know if anybody agrees, because I don't want to. I enjoyed shows like Little Britain, and I enjoyed controversial radio, but at the time, it was always throwaway. It was never really I never really took it seriously. If you think like American Pie, I've never liked American Pie, but if you compare it to, if you watch it in today's market, it's very offensive and very outdated. But if you watched it back then, it had a place and it worked and it represented that time. It's like I use a British example, like The Inbetweeners. The Inbetweeners was so accurate to my childhood, so accurate. It was basically my childhood, should I say my teenage years. But now, when you look back on it, some parts are generally offensive to the current modern audience, and I understand. I completely am somebody for like if there is a poor taste joke being made, or there is something what is not very tasteful, yeah, let's just bury it and let's just leave it. But on this side of society, we're digging things up and we're killing them, and I don't think it's making us a better species for it. Because back in the day, Little Britain was controversial. Back in the day, The Inbetweeners was controversial, and American Pie was controversial, and we knew the themes what existed were excuse me, were problematic. I'm gonna take some water. But we never wanted to kill it. I feel like we just stopped watching it, or I feel like we wrote a snooty article. Now it feels like certain groups and minorities are pulling things out of the files and just executing them. And it part of me thinks that this is a good thing in a way, because society has to evolve. We have to look at everything what's being created, everything that's being made, and we have to evaluate it, and we have to think how it stands, and is it infringing on people's current rights and beliefs. We have to do that. But this witch hunt itself, I don't have a problem with, because as I was just a minute, like as I'm saying, it's always going to happen. Like things what are happening now, things that are being made now, we'll look back in 15, 20 years, and we're also probably as a society tear them apart. The problem what I have with this witch hunt is it's making society so splintered. It's scary. This is how groups and collectives and can be easily manipulated, and we can end up in very, very difficult times as a society. This is how those things start. You know, in the 1930s in Germany, the German society was so split. There was so many different groups: Social Democrats, National Socialists, Socialists, Communists. So many different people believed in so many different groups and different ideologies, to the point where a ruling authority was seen as a good thing. A dictatorship was seen as a positive. So, on one hand, I'm very happy that we're all allowed to discuss and evaluate things from the past. But why I missed the early 2000s was because when we used to discuss and evaluate, it was always thrown away. It was just throwaway news. We just got on with our day. If we disagreed with somebody, we just got on with our day. So it was so much more enjoyable. Like, arguments used to be funny. I'm sure you've all seen those Xbox Live party, like, lobby arguments with kids just screaming, and then like, they were funny. Like, it was a funny thing to troll and wind people up. But now what we've done, we've taken all of that and we've made it personalities. We've made it personal. We've made it real. Before, an argument didn't used to be real. Like, if somebody, I mean, my grandparents hated Little Britain, hated it. Every time it came on, they would change the channel, and that's what actually made me want to watch it. Through their hatred, and I wasn't even the biggest fan of it. In fact, when I've actually watched it back, I actually prefer it more now than I used to. It was never really my sort of humor as a kid, but now I actually appreciate it. So that's what I miss, and I feel this error, and I feel that the reason why we all feel so numb and so out of it is because this era it almost doesn't feel real. Almost doesn't exist. There is no chill. There is no relaxation. Everything just feels always heightened. And the 2000s always felt sunny and silly and throwaway and edgy and just fun. I understand that I grew up in the 2000s, so my childhood was basically the 2000s. So I know I'm seeing things through rose-tinted glasses. I'm not saying everything in the 2000s was great. I'm not saying the era what we're living in now in 10 years, we'll probably look back on them and be like, oh, that was great. That's what happens every decade, every part of life. We, as humans, we look back and we wonder where it all went wrong, and we sort of miss the hard times. Even if we had a hard childhood, we missed those moments because everything was fresh and new, and we had our whole life ahead of us. So I'm gonna end the video there. I feel this is a trend what is coming up. This reimagining of the 2000s. Okay. Ciao.